This is the video for doing a custom sleeve draft that will go back to your basic bodice, front and back bodice. The sleeve draft that we're going to do in this video is for beginner pattern makers, and we're specifically going to use measurements that will perfectly fit back to this size 4 draft. If you have not done the size 4 draft yet with me, be sure to go back and do those videos first and then come back up here and do the sleeve draft, which will match back into this. If you're looking for a video specifically on just doing custom sleeves and you just need to get right to the point on that, there's another video here for doing custom sleeves, and I talk about using all kinds of different measurements and the different adjustments as well if you're moving into plus sizes. So let's take our size 4 basic bodice and we're going to go back to the tabletop and we're going to draft a sleeve to match back to this perfectly. The textbook that I'll be recommending for doing your sleeve draft is the Patternmaking Made Easy from Connie Crawford. Inside the book, we're going to go to the section here for sleeve draft. And here at the beginning of the chapter, she has a description for the basic sleeve. That's what we're going to be working on. Since we're doing a sleeve for the very first time, we just want to do a basic sleeve as well. We're going to turn this into a master pattern, and from this master pattern, you can do all of your different sleeve designs. Inside of here, she has a measurement chart. This is sizes 6, 8, 10, 12, and 14. These are the recommended measurements that you'll use for those different sizes. For us, we're going to be using size 4, which is not here in the book, but I'll be giving you the measurements as we go. If you have this book, you can see that basically we're going to follow along with exactly what she's doing. And then towards the end here, we'll be adding an elbow dart, so this will be a fitted, tailored sleeve. We'll balance it and we'll check it back to our front and back bodice. Make sure everything's good to go, and then eventually we're going to cut and sew this in muslin fabric. When you move on to do some custom sleeves, you're going to have a few different fitting issues, and you can see that in the book as well. I did another video, it's more of an advanced video for doing custom sleeves, and I talk through all these different fitting issues on the sleeve and how to resolve them. When you move on to doing custom sleeves for yourself or a client, she has a section here where if you need more room and ease, especially when you get into developing plus size sleeves, there's a section here on how you can adjust the sleeve to add ease for movement. And all of these adjustments are the same that are used in the fashion industry. You can continue on through the chapters and she teaches you how to do other sleeve designs and how you will use your basic master sleeve to accomplish these other designs. So there's a lot of methods here with slashing and spreading, as well as doing a long sleeve, short sleeve, and then of course doing some cuffs and plackets for your sleeves, and a few more advanced variations of the sleeve. Of course, once you've accomplished the sleeves that you see here in the book, it's endless. Making sleeves goes on and on and on. So anything that you'd be influenced by, you can come back and reference this book as you move on to doing your own creative designs. The tools that you'll be needing for this assignment is the matrix dotted paper. If you only have plain white paper, then make sure you have some kind of a square ruler so you can square your lines out. You'll also want to have a long ruler if you have one, your clear sewing ruler, a green color pencil, a regular pencil, eraser, your French curve, paper scissors, a few sewing pins, your pencil sharpener, and some magic tape. Alright, let's get started. So if you're using matrix paper, this is with my dots going upright. I have 24 for the length by 18 inches for the width. Go ahead and prepare this paper. Go ahead and prepare this piece of paper now. Now I'm going to take my paper and turn it sideways, and I want to find the halfway point. Since this is 18 inches total, halfway is going to be 9. So go ahead and draw a line all the way through the halfway point, and making sure that your pencil is going right through the middle of all of these numbers. Let's go ahead and fold this paper in half right along that pencil line. And if you've done this correctly, you shouldn't see pencil on either side because the pencil is perfectly right down that fold. So the fold of the paper is here, closest to you, and the numbers are upright going in this direction. Now, from the right side, this would be the top of your pattern. We're going to come down 2 inches and square line into the pattern piece. If you're using plain paper that doesn't have the matrix dots, make sure that you are squaring this line with the center fold. And if you are using the matrix paper, make sure that your line is following perfectly right along the dots. This line that we just drew, let's go ahead and label this cap line and write that close over by the fold in the paper. This cap line is right here up on your sleeve. It's also where the armholes come up here to touch at the shoulders. That's where this cap line will end up. The next measurement we want to get is from the cap line all the way down to your wrist. So this will be measuring from here along your elbow bend and down to the wrist. The measurement that we're going to use is going to be 21 3/4. So you can measure from the cap line heading down 21 3/4. If you're using your sewing ruler, you could just come down and find that measurement. Go ahead and square that line out, and this will be your wrist line. Now let's label this the wrist level and write that here near the fold of the paper. The next measurement we want to have is the cap height distance. This would be similar to if you were looking at the side seam to the bottom of the armhole and the armhole up here at the shoulder, and then taking that measurement. So for instance, this would be 6 1/8. It's kind of a tricky measurement to do. If you look in the book, you'll see that it's listed out for sizes 6, 8, 10, 12, and 14. So from the cap line, we're going to measure along the fold going down 6 1/8. And then square that out into your pattern piece. And we're going to label this the bicep line and write that close over here near the fold of the paper. In between the bicep line and the wrist level, halfway is going to be our elbow. If I measure from the bicep line down to the wrist level, it's 15 1/2. And if I divide that in half, I'll get 7 3/4. So measure down 7 3/4 to find the middle of this and put a small mark right there. Then from the wrist level, coming up to that halfway point, we're going to continue going up towards the bicep line 1 more 1/2 inch. Again, this is the halfway point at 7 3/4, and this is plus 1/2 inch going towards the bicep line. So this will be our elbow line. Go ahead and square that into your pattern piece, and we'll label this elbow line and write that close to the center fold. Now come all the way up to the top and let's review this again. We came down 2 inches to find the cap line. We came down 6 1/8 to find the bicep line. Then we came all the way down 7 3/4 and we moved back upwards 1/2 inch to find the elbow line. And then from the cap line all the way down to the wrist level was 21 3/4. Make sure that you double check all of your measurements, and yours is exactly like mine, so then we'll have the same results when we get into the shaping of the sleeve. Alright, so turn your paper back so the fold is closest to you. And what we're going to work on now is we're going to start building the depth going into the pattern piece. Now, because this is folded in half, what we're looking at is this is the full sleeve, and for now we're just working with half of a sleeve. So here, if we look at a finished sleeve, you can see that the bicep is the longest measurement going into the pattern piece. Where this measurement comes from is if you take the circumference of your client's bicep, that's the measurement. And then of course you would add ease to that so they can move. Now the bicep measurement that we're going to use is going to be 12 1/8. And again, since this is half of a pattern piece, we want to take 12 1/8 and divide that in half. So now we'll have 6 1/16. So come down here to the bicep line at the fold. From the fold, we're going to measure into the pattern piece 6 1/16. Make a cross mark here, and let's circle that with green. The next measurement is going to be the elbow circumference. We're going to use 10 1/4, and we want to divide that in half, so this will be 5 1/8. So from the fold, measure in 5 1/8, make a cross mark, and circle that in green. So double check yours now with me. Here at the elbow, from the fold, we measured in 5 1/8. And along the bicep line, from the fold, we measured in 6 1/16. Now with those two dots, what we're going to do is we're going to connect them with a straight line. This line here, we want it to connect all the way out to the cap line and all the way down to the wrist. If you have your short ruler, just make sure as you move it up to get all the way to the cap line that you're staying straight with those two dots all the way through. Now this line that we just drew right here, this is going to be your underarm seam. So that's that seam underneath your sleeve, and it connects right up with your side seam. So we can see on this pattern piece, it's this right here, the underarm seam. And eventually that underarm seam will connect right here with the side seam. So come over here in between the elbow and the bicep, and we're going to label this. So write that underneath the line so it's here inside the pattern piece. Here at the bicep line, let's go ahead and write down the full measurement, which was 12 1/8. And then down here at the elbow line, the full measurement was 10 1/4. Now what we're going to do is, following along this new under seam, we're going to take the fold of the paper and match it up to this under seam. And you're going to notice as you fold it that this gets smaller and smaller as you get down towards the wrist, and that is correct. So take your time to make sure that the fold is perfect, touching your pencil line. And then we want to crease this really well so it's creasing all the way through both layers of the paper. Now when we unfold this, this fold here is going to be the quarter fold. And we want to put some dots on here so we can draw this in with our ruler. If you're using your sewing ruler, just make sure that you're following a nice straight line all the way through the pattern piece. And then in between the elbow and the bicep, right where we see the underarm seam, come down to this quarter fold and we'll label this. Now open up your pattern piece, and what we're going to do is we're going to transfer just a few of these lines here to the other side of the paper. So let's start here with the cap line. Go ahead and draw that all the way through. The bicep line down here at the elbow. And the wrist line. And then come over here, you can see the crease from the quarter fold from the other side. Let's go ahead and get that quarter fold in here as well. Now don't worry about trying to transfer the underseam to this side. We don't need it right now. Go ahead and fold your paper back in half. Now what I want to do is, in between the cap line and the bicep line is the cap height. I want to divide this in half. And then I'm going to crease that. Again, we went from the cap line down to the bicep line. Now we have the halfway point between those. If you need to, you can also check the measurement. It should be 3 1/16. Now come over here to where that new crease crossed over the quarter fold and put a light cross mark right there. Now from that new cross mark, we're going to measure going along the quarter fold up towards the cap line 3/4 of an inch. Make a cross mark there and circle this with green. So again, from the crease, we measured along the quarter fold 3/4 of an inch up towards the cap line, made a cross mark, circled it in green. Now come out here to the underseam at the bicep level, and we're going to measure from the underseam, following the bicep level, come back into the pattern piece 1 inch and circle that in green. Now the green dot here on the bicep line and the green dot here in the middle of the pattern piece, we're going to connect these two new green dots with a green line. Now following along the quarter fold, come all the way out to where it's crossing here at the cap line and circle that intersection. So now you should have a green dot here at the cap line and the quarter fold. You should have a long green line and then another green circle here from when we found the bicep line at the underseam. Sharpen your pencil and take out your French curve. With the straight edge of the French curve, we're going to match that up here with the quarter panel, and it's going up towards this cap line. What we're going to do is we're going to hit this green dot at the cap line. We're going to hit somewhere along this green line, and we're also going to come down and hit this green dot at the underseam and the bicep line. Now when you're connecting these two locations and hitting this green line, you'll notice that the French curve cuts below the bicep line, and that's okay. draw this line in lightly. Now you can see here we're getting the beginning of the curve for the bell shape of the sleeve. The most important part is the first part of the curve down in this area. The next part of the curve we want to find is the upper part of the bell shape. So taking a look here at your French curve, we just had it situated like this. We want to rotate this around so now the curved part is up here in the cap line area. Now we're going to have this curve come up to the fold of the paper. And we want to make sure that it doesn't point out or cut in. So we want to have 1/4 of an inch that will be straight on this line. So from the fold, measure 1/4 of an inch along the cap line, put a cross mark there, and circle it. So now we know that our curve should stop so it's square as it's moving beyond the fold. So what we're going to do is, having the straight edge of a French curve pointing downwards, we're going to touch somewhere along this green line, and we're going to come up and we're going to hit this green dot at the cap line. But something that's really important is you want to make sure that your French curve never goes above the cap line. So something that I like to do with beginner students doing the sleeve for the very first time is I'll have you tape your pattern piece to the table, bring your sewing ruler here above the cap line, and tape this in place so your sewing ruler will stay right where it's at. Then you can come in here with your French curve and hit somewhere along this green line, as well as touching that green dot. And then we can get our curve. Now obviously after you've done this a few times, you don't have to tape a ruler into place, and you'll always know to come up and hit that dot, which is 1/4 of an inch in away from the fold. But I do notice when beginners do this for the first time, they'll have a lot of issues with the shaping at the top of their sleeve, and mostly it's because they were cutting up above the ruler here. So I want you to just double check your curve with me now. So here at the underarm seam in the bicep line is where we started our curve. And it blends smoothly right into that green line. Then as you travel that green line, now it starts to blend over here towards the cap line. And this last 1/4 inch here is a perfectly square, straight line. So the bell shaping going from here and then moving up into the cap height of the sleeve is what we want to keep. When we put in this French curve line out here towards the cap line, that's now old information. So let's go ahead and erase that just so it doesn't confuse you later. What I want to do now is I want to transfer the underarm seam as well as this shaping to both sides of my paper. What we're going to do here is when I come in to start cutting through both layers, I don't want anything to shift. So I'm going to pin these two layers together. So I pin them together along the curve, the corner here at the bicep, down at the elbow, and down here at the wrist level. Up here at the cap line and the fold, when I do my very first cut, I want to make sure that it's perfectly square with the paper. Then from that 1/4 inch dot, I can start to turn and follow the curve into the pattern piece, making sure that I'm cutting perfectly right along the top of my pencil line. Be sure to also cut off down here at the wrist level. And again, this will be perfectly square with the fold of the paper. Now this extra paper here, be sure to hold on to this. Just in case you made some kind of a mistake here on your draft, you'll be able to go back and find out where something went wrong. So now once I take the pins out, here I can see the bell shape for my sleeve. Make sure that at the top here it does not point up or cut in. It should be a perfect round shape at the top. And then down here at the wrist level, it should just be totally straight across as well. It shouldn't be pointing out or cutting in. Now let's take a look here at our front and back bodice. The shaping for the armhole is 2 different distances. If you remember, our back is 1/2 inch longer than the front, but also the shaping for these is a little bit different. So for instance, the French curve shape here on the back armhole is a little bit of a longer, smoother shape, and then on the front armhole, it's a little bit of a tighter corner. So the armhole of the front and the back are not mirrored, they're different, so it's asymmetrical. Just now we drafted this sleeve, and the sleeve is perfectly symmetrical on both sides. What we need to do is we need to adjust one of them so it fits and matches back to the front pattern piece. Now when you take a look at your sleeve that we just drafted, all of the writing for your bicep line and your elbow line, all of the writing here on this side of the pattern piece, this is the back. So come up here into the cap area and we're going to write B, K, and circle it so you know that this is the back armhole. Then of course on the other side here, in this area, we're going to put FT for front, so you know that this is the front armhole. What we're going to do is we're going to make an adjustment here at the front armhole. So go ahead and turn your pattern piece towards you, having the front right here. So just double check with me. The back is where you did your writing on. And then on the other side here, this is the front. And what we're looking at is this area here on the front of your sleeve. Now what I want to do is, here on the underarm seam, I'm going to tape this down to the table. And then right here we have this 1/4 fold going up towards the armhole. Above that, I'm going to tape this to the table as well. So now none of this area will move. Take out your green color pencil, and down here at the bicep line and the underarm seam, we're going to go ahead and put a dot right here on the edge of the pattern piece. Then follow along the armhole, and here's that 1/4 fold, and let's put a dot right there on the edge of the pattern piece as well. So both of these are in green. Now in this area right here, we're going to trim away 1/4 inch and we're going to blend it. So down here, it's going to be 0. So right here, put -0. And over here at this other dot, also write -0. Inside of here, we're going to -1/4. 1/4. So taking your ruler, following along the edge of the paper, we want to come in 1/4 and draw a light guideline. And then let's make that in green. Now take out your French curve, and the straight edge of your French curve is going to be pointing up towards the cap and following along this 1/4 panel. We're going to move our French curve up to where we can touch this dot on the edge, somewhere along that green guideline, and this dot on the edge right here. So if you've done this correctly, it'll be 0 right at the edge here at the 1/4 panel. It carves in 1/4 of an inch, and then it comes all the way back to blending to 0 here at the bicep line. Now this curve blends nicely right into the bicep line, but over here at the 1/4 panel there's kind of a sharp edge. If I were to cut this out, you would see a little point right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate my French curve so it's matching back up here at that original cap shape. And then I can come back into here, and you should see that it's blending out just a little tiny sliver just to clean it up so it's a nice smooth curve all the way through here. Now come into here and put some marks on this area so you know that this we need to cut away. So then what we're going to do is we're going to very carefully cut off this piece from the front, and I want you to hold on to this, and you're going to lay it out onto the tabletop. So go ahead and take a picture of this pattern piece as well as the little sliver that you cut away from the front, and submit this to me as part of your assignment for completing this video.